The first one we have here, Kevin, involves Reality Winner, the whistleblower whose case you've been following very closely for a long time now. We have a COVID-19 outbreak confirmed at the prison where she is incarcerated. What is this story?
It's a horrible story, is what it is. It's what her attorneys had warned would put her in danger, and why, going back to April, they've been asking for her to be released. And it's why other prisoners in facilities throughout the United States have demanded a release, because it's well known that the Bureau of Prisons has not taken appropriate precautions to protect prisoners, that it's extremely difficult to protect prisoners from the spread of COVID-19. And as we're seeing spikes in over 30 states throughout the country in the past week to 2 weeks, especially before the July 4th holiday weekend, we know that we are going to hear of further expanded outbreaks in these facilities. And one of them in Texas is Carswell, where Reality Winner is incarcerated. We're hearing from public health officials that they are treating this as a facility outbreak, which is remarkable because a lot of the public health departments have spoken about community outbreaks and suggested that they were able to control facility outbreaks. And in fact, this is kind of going backwards for the state, because you're having a facility outbreak later in the pandemic. And it's just inexcusable. It shouldn't be happening. And it's also partly why you've had advocates throughout the country say that there needs to be decarceration. There needs to be people released from prisons. Start with the most vulnerable and then work your way down and release people from prisons to protect against the spread. The less people in facilities, the easier it'll be for social distancing, and the easier it will be to actually protect safety. And so there are currently 68 women that have tested positive at Carswell. There are 3 staff that have tested positive. And this is unfolding as her appeal is going before an appeals court challenging the denial of her request for compassionate release. You can head on over to Shadowproof and read a full report breaking down the arguments from the government and arguments from her attorneys replying to the government. But essentially, it's my view that there's a game being played here, that the U.S. government is essentially playing a game with Reality Winner's life, because they are saying things that are completely nonsense, like your medical records that you brought before the court are not up to date enough. You didn't bring forward good enough evidence to show that the medical conditions in which you suffer from actually leave you vulnerable to the COVID-19 virus. You didn't show that the medical prison is ill-equipped to handle responding to the COVID-19 pandemic. The fact is, this ruling was issued by the district court without allowing an evidentiary hearing to happen, where that sort of evidence could be put on the record before a judge. Also, they have the most recent medical records for Reality Winner in their custody. And so, as I can glean from reading the filings, the attorneys that represent Reality Winner put the paperwork in that they have, they put the records in that they have, but they don't have the most recent medical records at Carswell. And so that's for the government to put forward. And so those records really should probably be subpoenaed and forced into this lawsuit so that people can see the truth, that there are these conditions that she currently suffers from that make her vulnerable to the coronavirus. So you've got that technicality. And essentially, there's this whole idea too that she requested home confinement and didn't actually make a request under the compassionate release statute. And so in effect, the administrative process really didn't start. And so her appeal was premature, and she should never have jumped forward and gone to the court to ask for some kind of intervention. And this is happening during a pandemic. There are people's lives at risk. There are even prisoners who have died. And it's the Bureau of Prisons and the Justice Department's position, which is typical and has existed before the pandemic, but it's their position that you let an administrative process unfold that will never uphold your rights, and you wait and wait and wait until you finally become severely ill and or on your deathbed, and then you might have the ability to go before a district court to get them to save you, but you're going to have to deal with an appeal, and you may even have to go all the way up to the Supreme Court to prove your case, which could take years, and you could be dead by then. Or you could be permanently damaged as a person because of what you endured from getting ill or getting cancer, something of that magnitude. And so her lawyer, Joe Whitley, wrote in the filing that this whole thing, this nonsensical theory, is emblematic of the government position regarding Reality's compassionate release request and its scattershot approach to the COVID-19 pandemic at large. And further declared, in short, because the Bureau of Prisons was not prepared for the type of pandemic, a prisoner's last and only resort is the district court. Her mother, who was very and understandably afraid for her daughter, had spoke to me, shared some of the bleakness that Reality Winner is trying to survive, and mentioned that her daughter feels she is, quote, suffering through this hell in a black hole where nobody seems to know or care what's happening to them. And it's her position that the denial of her release was wrong, that the government could have long ago saved her from the suffering that she's going through. Her and other prisoners definitely deserve to be able to obtain compassionate release. And especially for Reality, who her sentence will be over with all the good time credit she has. She would be done next year in 2021 and could go to a halfway home in the middle of 2021, and she could re-enter society. And right now, with this outbreak in Carswell, you have to imagine what it's like to be in this facility and wonder if you're going to make it to 2021.
Thank you, Kevin, and I really appreciate you staying on this. I don't think there are any other journalists really telling this story and giving this much necessary attention to what is happening at Carswell, not just with Reality Winner, but with the other folks that she is incarcerated with. So I appreciate your reporting on this, and I know you'll stay with it. Yeah, go ahead.
Just to give a quick shout to a local publication, we know that all of these local newspapers are under duress during these times. I think the Fort Worth Star-Telegram has done some good reporting on prisoners in Carswell, as well as the men's facility that had an outbreak. I think it's still struggling through an outbreak, and with the complete total lack of transparency on the part of the Bureau of Prisons. If you're interested in what's happening with prisons in Texas, because Texas has gotten a lot of press since there's been these surges in cases, you could go to their local newspaper and read. They've talked to prisoners. They talked to Billy, her mother, and they've talked to other people who have tried to help out and get prisoners released. So I think the Fort Worth Star-Telegram has done some good journalism.
Yeah, that sounds exceptional for sure. So thank you for sharing that.